Hey Jay.
Hey man,
It's good to see you.
you too. Man.
All right, so what do we got today? You got a
Today
big
on the
one, right?
show, we brought on the company we have is MailChimp.
Ooh.
Long, big. This is a big one. This is truly the
I feel
800,
like
800 pound gorilla we're bringing on the show today.
and we've had a long-term relationship with
Oh yeah,
MailChimp,
and
as many
I'm
others probably have
like,
too.
in terms of like a fanboy, MailChimp is definitely one that's like really close to home for me. Mm-hmm. And so today's episode is gonna be a little tough.
Welcome to The Experience, brought to you by Weave.com, a show that explores what it takes to compete on customer experience and build an online company that can last decades. As always, thanks for being a supporter of the show.
I'm excited to see what you uncovered because I have the experience from back when they
Right.
feed out. Who were we using? Oh, was it Cam? Who was like their competitor back in the early days, like in the thousands, like Campaign Monitor, one of those?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, there was a couple, but yeah,
There was a big one, and those guys stood out. Like I think won our hearts. There's been some interesting stuff that I'm guessing is what you're alluding to. That it's been challenging and from even a business and product perspective. But you picked out a pretty cool drink. So.
I did. Just go along with the theme of MailChimp, monkeys. This is the Banarac, so it's a riff on the Sazerac.
Yep.
So it's got. I mean, let's take a little sip, but it's.
We got to take a sniff first because Sazerac's it's got the same template. So
it's got absinthe and banana liqueur.
Mm-hmm. Rye.
Is there anything else?
And a touch of I'm gonna it's like a type of cognac.
Yeah, and it looks like if anybody's watching, if you're not watching, it's in a just a typical whiskey glass, and it looks just like you poured just a thing of bourbon or scotch or whiskey.
Well, yeah, it's just
it's
a good
neat.
classic drink.
It's
yeah.
neat.
Oh yeah, there's no ice, there's no garnish
it's just
inside of
very
it.
neat.
Yeah.
Like it looks Mad Men, right? But
it's I will say like that banana liqueur. Like I love Sazeracs. Banana liqueur definitely gives it a whole different vibe. It's kind of good though. It's kind of like it's a little sweeter for sure, but it's also got kind of a cool funk to it.
Yeah.
Good choice. All right. So we are going to walk through. Are you going to kind of walk through the business stuff first, or
I'm going to just give a quick recap. I know a lot of people know about MailChimp, but those that don't,
all right. So can I ask you a somewhat leading question? Are you going to tee up kind of what MailChimp was and was known for, and then kind of where they're at?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So MailChimp, email marketing tool, founded in 2001.
Wow.
Two founders, Ben Chestnut and Dan Kruzerius. Ben's like the CEO. Dan's more of the chief customer kind of officer. They've both been involved since day one. If you don't know the background, MailChimp started as they were a web agency company. I think it was called like Rocket Science or something like that. And then they built a tool to send emails for their clients.
I forgot that they had a Basecamp kind of origin story.
And then they decided, and they started in 2001. Then in 2007, it wasn't until they went and finally shut down the agency and went full time on MailChimp.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So again, speaking in internet years is now sounding like dog years, but 2007
20 years
is over 20 years, 13 years.
Oh, I'm even thinking from '01, but yeah. Sorry.
20 years, from the start. Crazy. With all that being said, zero funding. If you don't know, that's amazing. I mean, and then
actually, I didn't realize that. So they've not taken any funding at any point to scale.
Completely bootstrapped.
So can you unpack that one for a second? Because I think that's an interesting point. Like they're a company that not only has like kind of self-funded. They had an itch they scratched, right? They probably got the agency to kind of like, again, like Basecamp, right? To kind of fund it. But they scaled. Like there's a point where they were competing and had to get big and they didn't do any funding for any of that. Huh? Wow.
But I also think too, like, I mean, not taking anything away from them, but like it's definitely a different time back then. Like everyone now is money's so cheap and everyone's raising money. I don't know. I'd be interesting now what it would be like. But not taking anything away. I've read a bunch of articles around the revenue, but this is super interesting. It's just amazing. So 2019, I think there was talks of $400 or $500 million. Or I'm sorry, 2018, $400 or $500 million in revenue, just annual revenue.
Okay.
On TechCrunch, I saw in 2019 they said they were on pace to do 700 million.
Oh, they grew 50% in 1 year.
I mean, I don't know. Don't quote me on the terms, but I'm just and obviously they're not a public company, so they're just these are numbers that you know what I mean. Gotcha. So I don't know how accurate, but I mean,
still even to grow like 30% because
one of them was like a Forbes article, an Inc. article, and they're saying these numbers, and they're interviewing Ben Chestnut.
So the pull through there is that like again these guys have gotten big, like they're one of the main players in the space, but they're still actually that's a pretty big growth for a big company. Yeah. So
so it's couple things from this article that I want to kind of pull out to kind of talk about some of the origin. Again, for people that aren't familiar with it, because I had this infatuation with MailChimp. Like I loved MailChimp. The brand, the company the product itself was amazing. Even back in when they were first getting the templates designed, they were hiring, big designers like Elliot J. Stocks and all these big designers were designing templates for MailChimp. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, an article I found on Inc. This is published in 2017.
Okay.
With Ben. He talked about I want to talk about the freemium model, about just like their hyper growth. This is, just talking about pricing strategy. We talk about that a lot on the show. I think it impacts your experience for sure. A tipping point came in 2009 when Chestnut made a somewhat counterintuitive decision. Let's just make the whole thing free. So I'm quoting all of this. If your customers are small businesses, make it easy and cheap for them to try it out, his thinking went. That means they'll be happy once they pay for your services because it means their business is growing. The freemium plan was the first time MailChimp directly tied its fortunes to those of the small business customers. In terms of sheer volume, it was a swift success. We had about a few 100,000 users on the system. And within a year, it was 1 million. Within another year, it was 2 million. And it just kept growing from there. So he talks about just this shift to freemium and how that really kind of ignited the growth.
But sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
There's another story underneath that's interesting that isn't explicit there is they grew a number of users. They didn't necessarily grow. They may or may not have grown in revenue, but they basically were able to they're self-funded. Again, this is super impressive. They were able to grow with that infrastructure, like the cost of having that many people around and still be profitable enough to keep in business, or they were funding it through something else. And so, although that's 09, so they'd already shuttered the other thing, right? So that's impressive. But I think it's just an interesting thing to say, like freemium can grow in certain ways, but can also like put a weight under your feet and say at the bottom of the ocean if you're not doing it in a way that's smart.
It's also interesting too, if you think about back then, 2009, right?
Yeah.
Blogging was massive.
Yeah.
Blogging's still big, but I mean, there's other places where audiences are. Back then, your audience was online, coming to read your blog or go to your store, and now they can go to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever they want to go to see you. And so back then, none of that existed. So
for sure, and I think it's funny, and just I want to touch on something else you mentioned real quick, because again, I think it's important to set who they are and what they've been, because it's an interesting contrast. You mentioned like the idea of like they were the self-funded and kind of. I guess identifies to what you and I have been over the years, but like they spoke to us, right? We heard that, whether we had a small business or doing web development, whatever it was in the day, like,
and even like that design piece too.
Exactly.
They were big
and having
in the
like
design world back then.
But their execution was like really nice. Like you got in and this is like 15 years I was using it with clients, and I could get them in there and they do use it well. And then the whole brand thing, there was this kind of thing that I was always a little jealous of, the whole monkey bit. And how well they nailed just this idea of someone I could actually have a relationship with that company. Like I felt like they were someone I could like and rally for, as opposed to someone taking my money.
So even talking about the brand for a second. So if you remember the early iterations of MailChimp, like you said, it was this big mascot. It was a monkey. And just seeing the evolution over the years where the monkey became more of an ingredient piece of the brand rather than the full ingredient. You know what I mean? It was just blended in there every once in a while. And now, I mean, you kind of see the monkey every so often, but I mean, he's kind of in their logo a little bit more now. But
he's definitely a mascot, but he's not like centerpiece in all their
But it's been cool to kind of see that. I think that's it's like a testament to them just growing up, right? And like just maturing and being kind of widening who their product is for. Sure. So okay, also, to 12.5 million active users as of 2019. That was on MailChimp's site.
Active.
It's crazy.
And that's presumably that 700 million rev.
Yeah, just nuts. Okay, so I think most of this episode, I want to go through the experience, and we can keep talking about the origin, but I just want to set it right now that like, if you're a marketer online, everyone's. And you wouldn't see it in their numbers. I'm talking about these numbers because like they're growing and they have like, it's like something crazy. Like 60% of the email market share is MailChimp. Like it's nuts. Like everybody's on MailChimp, but but it's so weird because everybody I talk to has left MailChimp. Every single one of my marketing friends has left MailChimp. Actually, the big dogs now are Active Campaign and Drip.
I've never even heard of Active Campaign.
I shouldn't even say Drip. Get that out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Active Campaign.
Okay.
Is like where everybody's going.
Okay, so
As a
I'm obviously
marketer,
not. I'm obviously
because
not playing that space. So
and then what else happened too? There's a bunch of fundamental things like. So before I get into some of the details, like MailChimp cut their relationship with Shopify for some of the e-commerce integrations, and so MailChimp made this shift. And I know I'm fast forwarding, but I just want to make sure I get this point home, and then we can go back and trace our steps forward. In my opinion, MailChimp has lost their secret sauce, their ability to. The identity that they had as an organization, like we were just talking about this, like a product evolves, but just as much as your product is a thing that's ever evolving and moving, your organization, your company is also a product that's ever evolving.
And one is a product of the other, yeah, for sure.
Yes, and I always felt like, and this is what we're talking about, the MailChimp organization, their philosophies, the way they approach things was exemplified. It was huge inside of their product. Like you could see it because of them. You know what I mean? It was all driven by this ideology that they had.
Okay, can you summarize that ideology, like what it was in your mind or what you experienced?
Well, again, you got to remember they talk a lot about. So Ben helped his mom who ran a hair salon. Dan helped his dad or parents that had a bakery. So big small business oriented. Like it felt like a lot of empathy and what those people needed at the time.
So if we were to translate that, was it like just like focus and usability, like high usability for like non-technical people? Simplicity. Okay.
Simplicity and quality. Like it was like everything felt quality and thoughtful, and it still does to an extent. But I think that the email marketing space has turned in. Everybody calls it a commodity space, just like the hosting space, right? But there's still people spending billions of dollars in this space. And it just felt like they wanted to make the transition to this. They call themselves now the all-in-one marketing platform. Yeah. They're no longer an email platform. They're the all-in-one marketing platform. And I think I love the aspiration. I know they're doing. I just feel like they rushed it. And they're just kind of like, they just feel like what I was saying about this drink earlier is like you could just huck a banana in an old fashioned or a Sazerac and be like, yeah, it's different fucking Banarac. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just kind of, that's why I picked this drink, because I just feel like they just hucked something over here and being like, well, we're MailChimp. Like, this works. Like, so, what do you mean it does? Sorry, I'm going to finish my thought. But there's so much marketing jargon. There's so much just weird stuff in their product now where you just, that magical, like, just simplicity piece that they had is missing. Okay, because I think that's the crux of what we should talk about and that's, I think, to frame it up. So you have a company that was really focused on a singular problem, right? In a singular space, email communication, and how to make that effective, enjoyable, and accessible for people who aren't like design. Like it was even really helpful for designers because once you can work quicker, everyone else is happy. But it was good for anyone, right? And I know exactly what you're talking about because that's what I experienced, which I'm guessing happened about 3 years ago. It feels like, is that when they kind of made that jump? Can't remember the exact time, but something like that. But from a business perspective, you can imagine. you can be empathetic. Like, okay, guys, so obviously, the job we're serving, as it were, is to help people talk to their customers. Email's but one channel. How else can we do it? I would love that you reminded me of the Shopify thing because I totally forgot about that part. So like we could do it in these ways. And remind me, did MailChimp have like an e-commerce thing? Is that where the conflict came with Shopify? Yeah, exactly. And now they're doing, I mean, if you go to MailChimp now and you go to their first tab inside of their dashboard is a create tab. Yeah. You click it and it drops down. It's 84 things. Yeah, it's 84 things. It's email, ads, landing pages, it's everything. So what's interesting, I just want to kind of put this wrapper, or tell me if this is the right wrapper to put around what we're talking about here, is I feel like it's hard for me to fault that intent. Like, exactly. I understand where you're trying to go. I'm saying the same thing. And I appreciate the idea that you're actually saying, you know what, here's the larger problem we're serving and the value we can provide. Actually, those are two different questions. This is the problem we're trying to solve. Whether you can provide the value to solve it or not, so I guess a different question or a different thing. But then what you're bringing up is, and we've seen it, I would actually say that we've encountered the same thing with other companies, like Intercom is one that's had the same challenge in a smaller scale. Right. Where as they get bigger and they add in more stuff, it's really hard to, a few things seem to happen. So I'm just going to throw this out there, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So one is their capability to deliver on all those fronts. So they had one like core area of expertise, right? Another is like, how do you actually put these pieces together that make sense? And that's been a big one, right? And you just mentioned, like when I went to you and I went to MailChimp a couple months ago together on a project.
we literally did not know what button to click on.
Yeah.
Like we were stumped because of the words they had to use to describe stuff in a generic way that could make sense across all these things.
Back to the jargon
And you
thing.
and I are pretty smart.
And I was just going to say, we have been doing this
Yeah.
for a long time, and we grew up with MailChimp, and we grew up with all these tools. It's not foreign. It's not like we don't know what we're doing.
And I would say if we took it back to like the whole kind of experience metaphor we usually use, it's like we have this person who was like, I'm trying to think of like a cool metaphor. It's like let's go
back to the dating. No, let's go back to the dating thing, which is we always use in the show. It's a relationship with this person.
Yeah.
We met, you know what I mean? We're high school sweethearts.
Well, we've been in a relationship.
Yeah, we're high school sweethearts. We grew up and
I feel like
this person changed.
Like also in the 40s hit.
Yeah, like they just had a midlife crisis and they just. But
again, like, but the intent makes sense, but it's the execution of it's been really hard and problematic.
Yeah. So summarizing what you're saying is the intent is there. We get it.
Yeah.
But it's just the execution's been poor.
And I don't. And
is that what you're trying to say?
I do, and I want to put one other thing on that. I don't envy the position they're in.
Exactly.
This is a hard thing they're trying to do.
I need to underline something too, because I feel like I don't want to come across in this show like we're. I mean, shit. This is a 7. Let's just say
these guys are amazing.
Let's just say it's $500 million.
Yeah.
Bootstrapped from the ground up.
Oh, it's insane.
Like, fuck me. Like, that's amazing. There's only one. Like, I don't even know of any other companies that are like them. But they're like a unicorn.
But it does bring back maybe, and you're the one that has done more research on this than I have recently. So I want to let you drive kind of the conversation here.
Unit-chimp.
Dude. That's gonna be. You need to make that icon when you do the show.
Unit-chimp.
So, 2 things. One, does it make sense to? And this is like kind of the armchair football kind of thing, but I guess it may have made sense for them to move beyond the space. Maybe they feel they have to move beyond email. But to your point, email is like a pretty ingrained thing. It's not going anywhere. So, like, what was the cost of moving beyond email and the focus it afforded them? And then is there, like, what else would one do to try and connect all these weird disparate pieces that isn't the shit show it is today in these products? But so those are 2 larger thoughts I have, but I know you've got kind of like
let's talk through it. I mean, first of all, let's go back. Let's talk through that at the end.
Okay.
Of like how we would maybe attack this problem, which, you know.
Us, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take it for what it's worth. But just circling back to the beginning of I think I was around, 2012, 13, before we kind of jumped ahead a little bit fast.
Yeah.
So if you go back to like the templates, and everybody just loves MailChimp.
At this point, like, they're killing it in the email space.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
MailChimp is just
default. It's the standard.
Miles ahead of everyone.
The gold standard, yeah.
Yes. No one's even thinking about anything else. They get the Shopify relationship, so e-commerce is getting hot and heavy in 2014, 15. They're really just like, they're just growing crazy. They're changing the pricing plans. They come out with the pro package. We can get a lot of other things like segmentation filtering. There's another piece to it. Automation stuff.
So they weren't adding on other.
Remember the email brain came up?
Well, the brain I thought was the first part of this transition to the more.
It was, but it was much more around. It was called like the email brain. Like it was much more marketing automation, which made sense. Like when to trigger certain events and when to trigger emails based off your shopping history. That was their cool connection with Shopify. So they were still kind of staying true, and then they did the Facebook kind of and Google remarketing campaign, so that became native inside of MailChimp, which I think it's nice. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's actually pretty good. But and then they just went like, I just feel like they went nuts. Like they just started throwing everything in. They cut off their relationship with Shopify.
Okay, unpack that one to just remind me for a second. What was the competing thing that led them to do that? Were they doing something internally themselves?
There was some sort of tracking and stuff. They wanted to kind of be, they're a platform, which I get. Like MailChimp's big enough to probably make that call. But I just don't know if they were ready to make that call.
Oh, okay.
Like you're asking, what happens now? And I don't really know the answer. I mean, I haven't researched it, and like crazy, but I don't know their answer to leaving them. But I want to read a few more thoughts. So I wrote down some notes as I was like going back into MailChimp, and even just some recent like real life examples of me using MailChimp as a product for a product. Okay. Does that make sense? Like I was using it as a business for stuff that we're working on. Oh yeah. So so in the last 10 years, I've been like, I would consider myself a pretty decent marketer. And basic tasks are fine. Like you can go in there and create an email. You can go in there and whatever. It's okay. But like segmentation is not even easy to do. Their basic e-commerce integration we were just talking about is a complete shit show. I was going to say something else. They recently launched a website builder, which they use the same builder as. So if you use MailChimp, there's an email template that has this builder. So you have this window pane on the left. On the right-hand side, you click on it. You can click edit, and you can edit this email template. Well, they literally use the same exact experience to edit a website. And I just think
so it works really well for Tap.
Wix and Squarespace and Shopify even, like, it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this isn't even table stake. Like, how could you guys release this product and say, this is our new website builder and you're MailChimp? That's what I'm talking about with like the core identity of the business, the company
So
as a product.
some standards feel like they shifted.
Yeah, like what happened to that core belief of like, this isn't what we ship. This isn't what we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was gone. The Shopify thing's just so big. I think that's big. But yeah, the insider marketing jargon was just, and I feel like I'm, you know what I mean? And it's just,
the UX around that's
there's this is funny too. Like if you have an e-commerce integration, they don't react, and it's they don't have a GUI for it. It's only API calls to like create products and stuff. So you can't. Like,
okay,
it's back to the whole thing. Like there's not an e-commerce thing. They just stopped doing Shopify, and then anything you want to do, you have to use an API. There's no GUI to like bring in or integrate Shopify. Or, you know, there's just nothing.
Wow.
And then on that note was like a big breaking point was, I archived some automation stuff for this e-commerce site. So I emailed support and I was like 10 minutes later, I was like, hey, can you bring that back? I didn't mean to do that. And they said, this is what they said. This does not apply to automations that track e-commerce sales. And that was it. And I was like, okay, well, can you bring it? And they just wouldn't bring it back. They wouldn't do anything. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, and so I guess to summarize the whole thing and staying with the Banarac and the whole fruit MailChimp thing, like they're just going after low hanging fruit for the whole marketing automation. They're going to like these greener marketing pastures thinking that's where everybody's going. And they've thrown everything out and like completely just,
yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just going after all this low hanging fruit. And
did you learn anything about how the company has grown in size? I'm just curious about the dynamic of the company. Did you have a chance to?
They're growing. That's what's weird. They're growing.
Well, they're obviously growing, but I'm just wondering like the company, like it reminds me.
But I think like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it just reminds me of the dynamic we've seen in some of these big companies where the priorities shift a lot. So I was curious
So this is what I think was happening with MailChimp. So it's an 800-pound gorilla. It's so big, and the head of the snake has been cut off.
In what respect? Focus?
Okay, that's a very like strong opinion. It hasn't been cut off, but I'm just saying, as an analogy. The head of a snake gets cut off, but the tail is still moving, right? And by the time you get to the tail, it's all the inertia has caught up. You know what I'm saying? So like they're making these changes. But when I say the head of the tail, it's not Ben and Dan.
Yeah,
I'm talking about their core user base, the people that love MailChimp, me and the marketers and the people that got them to where they are.
They're leaving. Okay.
They're leaving.
Yeah.
The head of the snake is leaving, and they're not going to see the impact because the snake is so long. But the time it hits the tail.
No, I got you.
You know what I mean?
And when you say that to me, what it makes me think of again, and kind of as a core question, I'm wondering here is there might be. We'd almost have to look at examples of companies that do it well. There might be a real high likelihood that there's a number of things you can do well as a company. Like you can be a company that does a lot of things, but you're going to become increasingly probably shittier at all those things.
Right.
So when you say head, like,
and then how do you even be approachable to someone?
How do they understand who you are, the relationship, everything?
Yeah.
But so that's like what you bring up is a really good point, like your core customer base. But I also wonder when you say it's like that focus is I think what maybe got cut off too, right? Like. Yeah. And again, I can appreciate like trying to shift it, but when you're anything and everything to everyone, I don't know if are they to everyone? Are they still to maybe small and medium business mostly, or?
Yeah, I think so.
They're trying to be a lot
they
of
have
things
a pro thing that like where you want to send like massive amounts of email, you can go up to enterprise.
But before, like where they were so brilliant, and it wasn't. I don't know. It probably wasn't by design, which is where they started. Was they were really, really good at a singular problem, and now they're increasingly average.
And honestly, they got to $500 million at that one singular problem. And again, like, it's really easy to say, like,
it is, yeah.
I mean, they need to go bring these other things in. So I don't want to jump into that yet,
but
we would solve that problem yet. But I
let me
want to say something else.
I would say this though. Irrespective of, like, we're not inside MailChimp. We don't run MailChimp.
No.
Like, we're two idiots on the side just commenting everything about them,
definitely,
right?
yeah.
But that said, we are people who use them. We're people who love them. And now, like, their core thing isn't valuable to us anymore. So they've actually, and that was the point I guess you were making a moment ago, is like, because of adding all this other stuff in, they've actually lost, like, the kind of golden goose there, right?
Well, and then they've created a bunch of, I don't want to say Me Too products, but just products where that core thing that they lost are being, like, ConvertKit. ConvertKit's made for bloggers, and even, like, it's like the simplest, dumbest thing that ConvertKit touts, which is, and it's not dumb, it's smart. It's dumb on MailChimp is what I'm saying. Is ConvertKit. So if you use MailChimp, if you have email lists, right, and you get charged by the amount of subscribers you have. Well, if someone subscribes to early access, or someone subscribes to product announcements, or someone subscribes to your general newsletter, if they're subscribed to all three, you get charged for 3 subscribers. Yeah. ConvertKit only charges you for one email. So one subscriber is one person. So they charge you, more and more for those. So, like, when you start building emails, sometimes you have to archive, and it's a pain in the ass.
So segments become a whole,
so that's what I'm saying. So segmenting has become an absolute nightmare because it's so impossible to do. And it's just, like, back to the whole core thing of, like, guys, how do you not see that that's a problem? How do you not see ConvertKit, who's making $20 million, as, like, a micro piece of MailChimp? Like, how do you not see that? Like, it's just
disruption,
and growing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you got ActiveCampaign. Then you got Drip, Drip is a mail automated system for only Shopify stores.
Oh, Drip's only Shopify?
Yes, it's called an eCRM. It's like a CRM for e-commerce stores for Shopify, and they do, like, automated marketing. It's basically what V1 was.
Yeah, the one that
we were doing it before Drip was doing it. And we kind of had the marketing automation thing where it was connected to a Shopify store, and it would trigger actions based off what the customers were doing. That's what first version of Weave was. That's what Drip is. Okay. And so it's like, that's what MailChimp was already there. MailChimp had that with Shopify, and they just cut its legs out.
Gotcha.
And so, man,
it's crazy. Okay, so I think I've derailed you a little bit. So tell me, like, you were trying to go another direction. That was it. Okay.
I was just talking about, like, the competitors and like how they're just listing out. But, like, I think I've exhausted everything I want to say. I'm going to say it like this. I fucking love MailChimp. I want them to just be the 800-pound girl. I want them to be the 18. I want to be the 80,000-pound girl. I want them to keep growing. I love everything they stand for. I love that they're from Atlanta, Georgia. I love that they've taken no funding. I love that they don't care about Silicon Valley. I love who they are. I love the brand. I love them. And I hate seeing them like this.
Well, and it
pisses me off.
Yeah, and I would put say additionally, the problem they're trying to solve is a worthy problem.
Yes.
I think it's smart they're looking beyond email. They've somehow, we don't know the insides of this company, but something is, just so you guys hear, if you ever watch this, something is happening where you're not, everything you're doing is like, there's a cost.
The voice of the customer isn't there for some reason.
It's not, like, it's not affecting
the original,
it. Yeah.
And maybe they don't care. Maybe they're moving away from them. I don't know, but, like,
they're not, I don't think they're foolish enough to, I don't know, it's weird. But
so let's move maybe into, like, okay, smarty pantses, me and you. Like, what do we do if we're them? Like, what would we do? And, I know we've kind of segued a little bit from like the origin of the show. So I can go into more of the experience with MailChimp, but I think most people have used MailChimp. And
when you and I have, like, talked, I mean, the experience that we've run into is a big disconnect, right? Yeah. We had someone that actually served a certain value for us, that we had a certain understanding of what we gave each other, and that has changed because they've been trying to grow in different ways. We either don't match up with the people they're growing up to, but I would argue instead, like, the way they're growing doesn't make sense. Like, you and I,
because,
we have the same needs.
This is what I think.
We're still
the core customer back in 2009 was all about blogging, and that's still a need. Yeah, it doesn't go away. But you know what I mean? You're reaching customers in different areas, so I get what they're doing, but it's like they just jumped over here and then forgot about this core thing, which is still needed.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say it a little bit differently, where the need is exactly the same it's ever been. You need to communicate to your audience.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to solve.
Just a couple different
avenues. But what they've done is two things. They've made it, in my experience, they've made it a lot harder to understand how to communicate with them by trying to traverse this big landscape. Like when I go into the product right now, it's really hard for me to make heads or tails of what to do. And then secondly is there's still like the need to communicate to my audience via email has not gone away.
Yeah.
And they've unfortunately gone backward in that direction at the cost of because of these other things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess if we were to speculate, one question I'd have is like, there is a core question, and it's not, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but it's interesting. Like if you're trying to serve that audience that has that need, right, of different, communicating their base, do you keep something like you have this kind of threshold of what's understandable? Do you keep bolting stuff on? It gets harder and harder to like just from like a product experience and UX perspective to put that all together. Because that's one challenge MailChimp has. They could, so for example, they could have said we're really good at email automation and triggers and all this other stuff about that channel. And there's something else we have over here that's like this other there's this other container that contains like social media or something else.
That's what I'm thinking.
Or
it's
so trying to connect them all in a way that makes sense.
So like you jumped, you move forward into like, okay, if we were going to solve it, I think that's their only option, right? So I think right now they're trying to keep it a congruent experience.
Well, all under one roof, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not congruent, but they're all trying to keep it under the MailChimp umbrella, which makes sense. But to your point, and to maybe say it a little differently, I think that if they were able to almost create like spaces that you could move in and out of, they could still all work together.
Yeah.
But just having more of that singular focus might help. Sorry, just to put an underline in that. I like what they're doing in the sense of, because their pricing strategy, if you've ever not looked at their pricing, go look at it. They've done it. It's remarkable. Like every piece of it is remarkable.
Well, you said there's some pain points, like how they price on some of but yeah.
No, there's no pain points. I like how they do it because they have this whole concept of like unlimited sends for smaller businesses, but as you get bigger, they take that unlimited out.
So once you've grown with that, they've
and it's this really it's really smart on their bit from a business standpoint, the deploy that they've made.
Yeah.
But sorry, what I was saying was what I like what they did is you can inside each plan, they don't take away from you. I mean, obviously you have to upgrade feature plans. They do feature-based pricing. Mm-hmm. So you have to upgrade. But in that plan, let's just say I'm on like their middle tier plan. I could just go in there and get my email stuff that I want. And then if I want anything else, I could go to that different space and go build that out if I want.
Rather you're than saying in this future version.
Rather than having it all in my face, or I just don't even know. That doesn't even apply to me. And as I make progression, personalize my experience and say, hey, look, now you've made it this point. Now it makes sense to interest you. Rather than just saying, like, here's sushi, steak, chicken, fish. Fucking God, you know what I mean? Everything else in my face. I'm like, I don't want that right now.
Well, that's why I think it is really like an experience and product design problem where, okay, so let me ask you this. As a marketer and your friends who are marketers who left it and are going to something else, did you leave it because they functionally stopped? There's probably like three things. Did you leave it because they functionally stopped doing something that was important or they don't offer something? Functionally.
Yes.
Did you leave because the pricing it wasn't like valuable anymore? They weren't giving you the right value for what they charge. Or three, did you leave because it was such a clusterfuck to get through the experience of the things that were valuable? Like was it
one and three?
So functionally, actually, they're dropping. There's some stuff missing.
Yeah, I mean, they dropped the whole Shopify integration.
Oh, gotcha.
Ridiculous.
Okay, all right.
Shopify is the biggest e-commerce platform in the world.
Okay, because I was
why the fuck would you drop that?
That makes sense.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
I was gonna say the third one though, like it
doesn't hurt them. You know what I mean?
There's you and I know how this works. There's some meeting somewhere where people are arguing over.
But I'm sure it was some BD guy, BD guy that just, you know what I mean? Like it's so stupid.
But I mean, again, like this is very kind of it's easy.
But if that was the case, if it was on MailChimp, sorry, I'm going to cut you off. But that was the case. MailChimp's big enough. They could have had something to.
Well, there should have been a better solution sitting in the wing to replace it.
I mean, even their landing page builder is such a far cry from anything I've ever seen.
So that makes sense functionally. But the other thing, too, is like, and again, it's easy for us to say here, like, sitting drinks on a podcast to suggest
I know.
But, I mean, to me, it feels...
But, like, at MailChimp, those amount of resources, like, they should be smarter at this point.
What I'm getting at is, like, so in terms of that experience part, there's this idea of like who I'm serving, like who my audience is. Like that's kind of congruent. That is a congruent space. It might be segmented by different channels like groups I talk to. And then there's like, how do I want to talk to them based on probably like who they are and what I'm trying to accomplish. So to your point, like if they could peel apart, it'd still be under MailChimp. But right now they're trying to serve it all. It feels like through one kind of experience, right? If you're able to say like, to whom are you talking? What are you trying to do? What's the right way to do it? Channel. Then you could get me like kind of zoned into a certain kind of intent.
Yeah.
And from there you could surface up, okay, this is the right way or that's the right way.
It's super easy. Think about it like this. So here's my proposal to MailChimp. This is what I would do. Keep your existing shit show that you have and, keep making your $700 million because you clearly know more than I do. But I feel like that's based off the brand and everything they built.
Momentum, yeah.
And I think that, again, the head of the snake is gone, is leaving, and they don't even seem to care. And I think over the next few years, they're going to feel that impact. Create a new experience for new signups, split it 50-50, even 10-90. I don't know, 10% of the new signups go to this new experience that I'm going to lay out right now, which is sign up, go through a simple onboarding process of just a couple questions about who you are as a consumer, right? Like, are you a blogger? Do you have a storefront? Do you have, what do you do? Yeah. What are you trying to do? Who are you?
Yeah.
Figure that out. Take 5 questions. Personalize the experience from the get-go. Give them what they asked for. As they start to make progressions, because you're still billing them the same amount, your billing's not going to change, right? You're not charging them more for a landing page builder. Mm-hmm. You're not charging them more to create ads. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So give them what they want. As they grow, you're going to have some algorithms in here and some logic, but like as you figure out, personalize that experience, then introduce the next thing. Like, hey, look, you've hit this checkpoint. Great job. Now is the next thing. Introduce customer success reps. Get them involved with the accounts. Like start to learn about what these people want because we're entering a new phase of the world in terms of where you're interacting with your audience rather than just email. Start to learn that rather than just so many assumptions right now.
Well, you know what's
I feel like the assumptions are so heavy right now with MailChimp that they're just...
Well, they're not assuming it's a problem. So like if I was to sum up what you just said, like they're building an expanding toolkit for you to communicate to your audience as a small business. Yeah. Like what was the line they're using now for their tagline?
All-in-one marketing program.
All-in-one marketing. Platform. Okay. So, but the problem is like when you give me all-in-one, I go to Toolbox, it's just overwhelming. I don't know what to use and the pieces don't line up.
I'm in Home Depot.
Exactly. So to your point, like you could actually lean into being focused about one area at a time, but also like you could actually, a lot of small businesses too don't know what to do when. It's actually really scary and overwhelming when you have all the choices.
Right.
So you could actually encode in, like we know that most businesses actually get the most success off of maybe email first and then this platform and that platform, and actually lean into and help me that way too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, put it back to you. I mean, you're MailChimp. You're sitting there with them in the room. Mm-hmm. Ben's here. Dan's here. What do you think?
I mean,
do you agree with what I said? Or is there another solution you have?
No, that's what I would say. No, that's what I'd say is I think like I can appreciate where you're going. I think the underlying job totally makes sense.
And it's hard.
I get it. Fucking hard.
You're at a hard job right now.
And you guys have all sorts of ideas we don't. But at the end of the day, like, can you decouple like short-term revenue gains, which I had to guess the Shopify one was for, versus like, actually like, the long-term value provided to a customer that can help you grow in the long term. Yeah. Can you actually try and lean into being opinionated in terms of like Shopify does a brilliant job of this on a side note. They help you be better e-commerce because they take away a lot of decisions from e-commerce and they give you best practices, right? MailChimp could do something similar in this space where they're giving you a lot of functionality, but they could give it, like you were mentioning, a little bit more of they could still be responsive to me changing and help me kind of raise my hand when I need certain different things, but they could help not give me too much at once. And then more importantly, or as important, would be as you get me in the experience, you need to actually help me. That territory that I'm trying to map in my brain is so weird and complicated right now, and it's like the buffet. Yeah. I need to go to like you said, I need to go to one restaurant at a time, and at that restaurant, I need to actually understand what I'm getting.
Exactly.
So yeah. But I mean, like, we love them, and the reason why this has been a hot topic is because we really do want.
And I feel like I'm so hot and bothered, but it really is just because I love MailChimp. Yeah, they're so great.
Well, I didn't realize until you mentioned tonight that that there was actually like a sucking sound of people leaving and going to another platform. So,
dude, just tonight when you get home, and anybody just Google MailChimp review or MailChimp. Versus whatever, and everyone's writing about it right now. It's like why I left and why everyone's leaving and 4 reasons why I left, and it's everywhere.
Interesting.
Which is not the way it used to be.
But it's still savable.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well,
right.
good show.
Yeah, good
That
show.
was very heated discussion.
It was. I think the Bananac got you all spicy there.
Dude.
I want to also point out, I love how Jay combined 800-pound gorilla and a 40,000-foot snake in the same metaphor.
And a banana rack.
And a banana rack.
All right, thanks for coming to the show. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Yep.
The Experience is brought to you by Weave.com, the innovative tool that helps SaaS companies automate their customer retention. As always, thanks for being a supporter of the show.